Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome back to the show. The Ducks started out 1-7-2 that we talked about in the last podcast, and how they needed to improve and do things better. And in this week, the Ducks fans are all going to be happy because the Ducks played 4 games. They won all 4 games, 3 at home and 1 on the road. We're going to get to all those games. We're going to talk about next week. We have several fan questions to answer for you, and we'll talk about how the Ducks turned it around. But the main thing was getting off to good starts, Eddie. And in this first game against Nashville, the Ducks started off with 3 goals in the first period by Raquel, Botnin, and Cogliano, and they basically didn't look back in this one.
Yeah, and it looked eerily similar to the game against Dallas when they went up against a good team and put up 3 goals in the first period, and we were all, after that Shea Weber power play goal in the second period, we're all crossing our fingers that wasn't going to happen again. But Chris Stewart gets his first goal of the season halfway through the second period, and like you said, from there they didn't look back. And he was one guy that we criticized heavily in the first 10 games, and he came out in this game and really led the Ducks to a win. Obviously along with Freddie as well.
Yeah, Stewart played a big role in this game. He was benched, before, and it seemed to jumpstart him. He ended up having 2 assists in this game. He also had the goal in the second period as well. That gave the Ducks, the 4-1 lead at the time, which ended up being 4-2. So he was, one of the best players on the ice in this game, and really turned it around. Played very well. As you mentioned, obviously Anderson played extremely well again. He's, played well in so many of the games that he's been in this season, and the Ducks did a lot of things right in this game. They only gave up 1 goal, while shorthanded. In this one, they had 6 opportunities that Nashville was given in this, but that was probably the only thing that they really did wrong, was giving up a power play goal, Eddie. They won the face-off battle. They played better as far as defensively and blocking shots and taking care of their net, and it was a really good win. Rene didn't start in this game because they had played back-to-backs with Los Angeles the night before, but overall a good win for the Ducks.
Yeah, it was the start of them getting back to what we saw last year and the system that works so well. But, having a team who had played in the night before and you expect them to come in tired and they end up outworking you and out shooting you pretty heavily. It's something that we eventually see them work on in the next few games, but it was nice to see them get back to the forecheck, get back to what was working, and finally end the losing streak and post a win against a good team.
Yeah, exactly. Nashville, coming into that game had only lost 1 game in regulation, so it was a huge win for the Ducks to get things going and start the momentum, which carried over into the next game. Against Florida, and this one actually, Florida started out with the scoring first, but again, Chris Stewart was there with a goal. He ended up having 2 goals and 2 assists in these 2 games, and this game was extremely exciting because the Ducks were losing 2-1. They get a power play late in the third. They pull the goalie. They had the 6-on-4 power play. And we talked about bounces and screens and on all those things that the Ducks weren't getting in the first 10 games, and they started getting them in this game, especially on that final goal. 5 seconds to go at the end of regulation. The Kessler shot actually hits 2 Florida Panther players, bounces right to Perry, and then he shoots it in to tie the game and send it to overtime, Eddie.
Yeah, and the relief on his face after scoring that goal, just proves how much he was struggling, and how much of a weight that is off his shoulder to finally get that first one. But kind of a flip of the script from the Nashville game. In this game, Freddie still had a great game, but it was Roberto Luongo in net for the Panthers who really was the bright spot for the game for them, and the Ducks could have walked away with this game pretty easily if he didn't make a couple of big saves. There was the one diving stop he made on Chris Stewart late in the game, which kept them in it. Obviously, in the end, the Ducks prevailed, and Perry getting that late goal, bringing back the heart attack hits from last year, and the Silverberg, he's gonna score in the shootout every time you get a chance, and then Stewart pots the winner. So. A big game. We talked about it before. This was a team, in the last post game live show that this was a team that they should be beating along with Columbus. And this is they left it a little bit late, but they played a game, and like we saw in the Nashville game, they were doing more of the things that we want them to see doing. The forecheck and just getting back to the play that made them so successful last year.
Yeah, in this game, the Ducks outshot Florida in every single period. 1, 2, and 3, and then Florida actually ended up having the better chances in the overtime in this one. If you recall, they had a 2-on-0 break, which Freddie stopped the first one, and then he ends up stopping the second one while basically, sitting on the ice, just waving his glove, up in the air and blocking the two attempts on that 2-on-0, and then Florida had also a 2-on-1 in that overtime as well. So I mean, Anderson just played outstanding. And after the second goal that I know he probably wanted back in this game because that one kind of handcuffed him, but he responded very well in the third, very well in the overtime, and obviously in the shootout as well, as the Ducks were able to get 2 goals in the shootout past the Longo, and Freddie stood tall, blocking 3 out of 4.
And this was also a game where we saw one of the guys we singled out for having one of the bright spots to the start of the season. Raquel went down with injury in this game, and obviously we see Freiberg and Wagner were the guys who got to fill the spot in the later games. But how big of a blow is this to the Ducks? I know we haven't heard any updates on it so far, but how big of a blow is it with the bright spot start that he had?
Yeah, you mentioned that, Eddie, and that's a big deal. Getzlaf being out. Raquel had played on the top line center position in some of the games, also in the second line with Kessler going to the top line. So having him go down like that was huge. We actually posted the video up on the game recap. If you didn't see it, it's on there, and you can see where he takes a headshot. So there's no real update yet on what's going on. I haven't heard if anything as far as concussions or whatnot. Nothing has come out. And usually the Ducks are pretty, they're pretty quiet about some of the stuff that happens until they can figure out what's going on with him. But we see he doesn't come back and he doesn't play in the next couple games. So that was a big blow. But Eddie, the Ducks did get Getzlaf back in the next 2, and it seemed to be fine. We talked about the center strength of the Ducks and the depth that they have. Also Nate Thompson's on the horizon too. He's been practicing. It looks like he's going to come back maybe the 3rd or 4th week in November. It sounds like somewhere in there. But you still have Santorelli that can play center. You have Horkoff. You have Kessler. You have Wagner as well that's been in there. So I mean, losing Raquel is big. Don't get me wrong, but at least the Ducks have depth at center, Eddie.
Yeah, and that's great to hear about Thompson too. I know a lot of people expected him to be out until early or late January. So having him back so early is going to be beneficial, and it means sending down some of the young guys, but having that veteran presence and his ability on the faceoffs is going to help down in the long run and in the stretch closer to the playoffs. But like you said, getting Getzlaf back. Maybe this is the start of him getting a season on track. Completely healthy. We saw that he was struggling with the sports hernia in the playoffs, and then this year, I guess you can't completely attribute his performances in the first 10 games to his appendectomy, but he comes back in this game and proves that he's 100% healthy, and him and Perry put up 3 assists.
Yeah, when they took on Columbus, they played very, very well in that game. And as you said, Getzlaf got it going early in this game, coming out with a good stretch pass to Perry. He led him down the ice. Perry ended up not scoring, but Cam Fowler follows it up. And we see the Ducks again take a lead in this game. This one they go up 2-0 en route to a 4-2 victory. And after beating Florida in that dramatic shootout win, the Ducks get their 3rd victory in a row on the homestand, 4-2. Eddie.
Yeah, and they grabbed another power play goal in this game, which was a little bit of an improvement so far based on how they started. Obviously, I mean anything could be an improvement on how they started, and the penalty kill was perfect again in this game, and been a real bright spot for the season so far. Obviously now with them winning 4 games in a row, it just adds to that success. But Yeah, having Getzlaff and Perry produce in this game, and getting produce more than we would expect, and getting 3 assists each, and just having a coming out party in the season is hopefully we're going to look forward into the next few games, and what they can do for this team, because we need them to step up and produce if the Ducks have any chance at getting back into the race in the Pacific Division.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and that's true. It does start with the top line, and we saw the reuniting of the old top line. Patrick Maroon was back in this game, and on the power play, he gets the rebound and taps it back in, which is what we had talked about, is the Ducks screening the goalie on the power play and getting more rebounds. Same thing on the 5-on-5 situations, and that's what the Ducks did. Another bright spot was Josh Manson. He ended up getting his first goal of his NHL career, which ended up being the game winner in this one as well. And Clayton Stoner got the airmail special that he nailed from the Ducks' own blue line, which was almost a strike. I couldn't believe it, Eddie. I thought the puck was going to hit the new scoreboard. That's how high it was.
Well, that's in typical Clayton Stoner fashion. I mean, he's not going to get it down there and anything pretty, but he ends up putting in the empty net, and that's all we need from him. And like you mentioned, Josh Manchin getting his first career NHL goal, and off a really pretty play by Getzlaff and Perry getting out to the front of the net for him, and all credit to him too on the finish. It was a great shot, and congratulations to him for getting that first goal.
Yeah, and another big point in this game too. The face-offs. Getzlaf came back. He was 56% in the circle. Kessler was 67%. Horkoff 59, and Wagner at 80%. He didn't take as many, but still, the face-offs were huge for the Ducks, and you could see that translate in this game. The Ducks ended up out winning in the faceoffs 35-21 against Columbus. So that was huge in terms of getting possession and doing better than that. And with puck possession, they've kind of been in the middle of the pack, and we've seen them get in and on the forecheck better, and they did that in this game. Throughout the whole game, and that's why they've been winning. They've been making better passes and dumping the puck in, and just getting in on the forecheck and working the cycle, Eddie.
Yeah, and like we've mentioned endless times, it's what they need to do, and it's a system they need to play if they want to succeed. We saw pretty much none of that in the first 10 games. A couple spurts here and there of that similar play, but it's just gotten better and better over these last few games, and leading into the San Jose game. At least for the first 2 periods, that play was there, and Perry was the beneficiary getting his second goal of the season, and a little bit of fatigue moving into the third period, which is expected, after the back-to-back. But a great game overall, and a real good defensive effort from everybody on defense, and definitely Hudobin in net.
Yeah, this game could have gotten out of hand, really. If you look in the beginning of the first period, Maroon gets an assist to Getzlaff on another stretch pass to Corey Perry. This time, Perry cashes in, gets that goal. And the Ducks were really flying in the first period. They ended up coming out with the first 7 shots in this game. Stewart almost had a goal. Kessler, who still hasn't had a goal, had a great chance. He's really been snake bit. And if it wasn't for the play of Martin Jones, the Ducks could have been up 3-0 at the end of the first period. So the Ducks played really well. Like you said, in the first half or so of the game, the second period got a little crazy. Kind of got back to the scrums that we've seen when we've played the Sharks in the past. Wagner, had the big check that he laid out, and after that, things kind of went haywire. After that, you see Michael Haley jumps off the bench and goes and starts a fight with Stoner, and Dylan and Wagner get tied up, and I really think the Ducks kind of got the short end of the stick on this, Eddie. Usually when a player comes off the bench to go straight to someone for a fight, they usually get an additional 2-minute instigator. And then with Wagner and Dylan getting booted out for the secondary altercation, which is per NHL Rule 46.7, if you guys aren't aware, but that's a kind of a rule that I don't know, Eddie, how I feel about it. Maybe you have an opinion, but it just seems like when there's multiple fights on the ice that the refs usually don't enforce it too much. But in this game they did, and Wagner and Dylan were tossed in the end of the second period.
Yeah, and that was a little bit surprising, like you said. I mean, a lot of people don't know the rule, and the fact that they both got 5-minute misconduct was a little bit surprising. I mean, in the end, it might have been a boost to the Ducks having San Jose only have five defensemen for the rest of the game. But it's nice to see Wagner get in there and be physical and make his presence known. I mean, he knows for a fact when guys come back that he might be the odd man out and either be the 13th forward or have to go back down to the AHL. And he's not going to score a ton of goals, but he's out there to lay big hits like he did and fight when necessary. And it's nice to see him get into the play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when there's road games, I try to upload all the videos of all his hits. I know his parents like that because they'll retweet him on Twitter and whatnot. But he's been throwing his weight around, and he's not the biggest guy, but he'll take on anybody. So it was good to see that. I think it kept the Ducks in line in that game and it carried them through the third. As you mentioned, they got a little tired, obviously, in the back-to-back situation. You really have to tip your hat off, though, to the Ducks penalty kill and to Hudobin. In the final 5 minutes there, the San Jose Sharks had 2 power plays. They pulled the goalie as well. The Ducks stood tall. They killed off all of those penalties. Hudobin with the shutout. And, that was just a crazy good effort in the last 5 minutes. I was sitting there watching that part thinking, here we go. They're going to get a goal off some, power play, and we're going to go to overtime again. But the Ducks stood tall, and their power play is ranked number 1 in the league, barring whatever happens in some of the other games as you're listening to this. But as of Saturday night, they were the number 1 power play, 91.7%, Eddie.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're definitely the penalty kill is huge so far, and those last 2 kills were major in the game. I mean, San Jose's power play is struggling this season, but last year they were so good, and they can kick into action anytime. You don't want to give them the chance, but it was tough to see that. I mean, you could see the fatigue definitely on Fowler's penalty, and being able to kill that off is big. And Hudobin, I mean, what a comeback for him and having such a great night. And even when he has a great night, he makes it look difficult. He's a kind of a flopper in net, but if he gets the job done like he did in that game and making 31 saves for the shutout, I mean, you can't really fault his performance.
Yeah, like you said, the penalty kill, one of the the big reasons, like we said, being top in the league, and Hudobin as well. It was interesting, when he was announced as the goalie, some people were like, "Hey, what are we doing here? What's going on?" And you have to realize with the back-to-back situation, plus the Ducks playing again on Monday, you have 3 games in 4 days. And you have to figure that Anderson, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but you have to figure he's going to play the next 3 home games coming up. So I didn't think that the move was a bad move at all by Boudreau to put Hudobin in there. I mean, I know it's easy to say it now after the fact, but you had to give Anderson a rest. In my opinion, he's still going to be number 1. But we talked about this even before the season, Eddie. Hudobin's a quality backup, and he's going to have to fill that role. And he's had a couple iffy starts, and we already know that. But it was good to see him get back on track. And the shutout was huge, especially after San Jose shut out the Ducks in the season opener for the Ducks, and then they returned the favor, Eddie.
Yeah, and like you said, it's huge. I mean, you would have expected to see him play Columbus in any other situation, but the fact that they have to play 3 games in 4 nights and go to Arizona on Monday, Freddie would go in for Columbus, so he has these rest of these days off, including the night when Hudobin was in for San Jose, and getting all that rest so he can come out and possibly, if necessary, play all 3 games this week. And for him to come in and have such a great start and let Freddie get a good night's rest is huge for these next games coming up.
Yeah, and the Ducks, after the poor start, winning these 4 games now, we've talked about this too. Playing against division teams and winning is huge. I mean, it's 2 points, but it's really 4 points. If the Ducks would have lost this game against San Jose, they would have been 6 points behind them. Winning this game, now they're only 2 points behind San Jose, who's in 3rd place, which would be a playoff spot. So in the beginning, when it was all gloom and doom, and many people were counting the Ducks out, now they're right there in the thick of things. There's still 70 plus, or just under 70 games to go. So the Ducks can easily get up there in the top 3. They're going to have some, division games that they're going to have to win coming up this week at home. Like you said, they're going to have to, beat Arizona, who gave them a tough time. They're going to take on an Edmonton team as well. So there's going to be some points out there that the Ducks are going to need to take advantage of, Eddie.
Yeah, and they were in a spot where normally a team doesn't come back from that and make a playoff spot. I mean, rarely does it happen, but the fact that the Pacific Division is struggling so much it definitely helps the Ducks out. I mean, Calgary, Edmonton, Arizona, even doing better than we expected. But all four of those teams, including San Jose, are all around 500, which definitely helps the Ducks. And I mean, last podcast we said when they were 1-7-2, if they win 6 games in a row, they're at 500. Which normally when you win 6 games in a row, you hope to be above 500 after. But in this situation, putting them at 500 isn't the worst situation right now, and what they'll actually possibly be second in the Pacific Division only at 500, which normally is definitely not good enough for that division.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I think that's an advantage. Luckily for the Ducks, is that the Pacific is just not as strong as the Central. We talked about the Central Division too last time, and all six of those teams. One team's going to be disappointed in that division. I'm going to tell you right now. Barring some kind of crazy set of injuries or something that happens to one of those teams, because they're all competing. So that's going to help out the Ducks for sure. And this kind of brings us to some of the questions that some of the fans had asked us too. With this last week, Phil had asked us about the Ducks and what do we think that they've done differently to start winning these games. The four in a row. And I think that some of this, Eddie, and we can talk about this, has been the passing, has been the dump in attempts, and the forecheck. I mean, those are the big three really that we've talked about. If they can connect the passes more, bring the puck in, or do dump ins where they keep it away from the goalie and let the other off winger come in there and crash towards the net or towards the side wherever the puck's at. I think those have all been huge, along with getting the rebounds and crashing the net just on the regular 5-on-5 play, Eddie.
Yeah, definitely getting back to the system that made them successful. I've said that countless times already on this podcast, but that was the main thing we talked about that they had to do is get back to what made them so good last year. And not only that, but having Getzlaf and Perry, be our number one guys. We needed them to be good, and they've turned it on in these last few games. And that's what we need from your top two players. You look at any successful team in the league right now. Look at Dallas, it's Sagan and Ben. You look at Pittsburgh now doing well. It's Malkin, it's Crosby, it's Kessler. You need your big guys to play well. And the looking at the Columbus game, they had a coming out party in that game, and they continued even only posting 1 point in that game, but it was enough to win in the San Jose game. Having them produce at high levels is going to be important to this team, and the like you said, the forecheck and continuing the penalty kill and hopefully getting the power play on track. Everything seems to be clicking lately, and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, you mentioned the power play, and the power play got a little bit better, in this last 4 games. They scored a couple times on there, and they were actually at a 17% efficiency rate, which, it's not great, but it's not terrible. It's much better than what they were in the beginning when they weren't even getting anything. So the power play's picked it up. One of Stewart's goals was 1 second afterwards. So if that goal would have counted, the Ducks actually would have been at 25%. Which would have been which is very good, over the span of 4 games. So it seems like the power play is starting to pick up too. They're getting the puck in there. They're having more offensive zone time on the power play, and they're not trying to make so many cute plays anymore. You notice now that Getzlaf's even shooting the puck more. That's how Maroon got his goal, and they're setting more screens on the power play. And they're doing all those little things that they need to do, 5-on-5 and power play situation. And like we said before, the penalty kill is doing its job. Freddie's doing his job. Now Hudobin's had an outstanding start. And if the defense can continue that streak, it's going to help translate into the offense. And that's really going to be the key. We're just going to have to wait and see on some of the injury stuff for the defense. We got Manson back on this stretch. Simone Dupre has still been out. He also, took a headshot as well. And there's no real further update on that. So we're going to have to wait and see when he comes back. And as we mentioned too, Raquel. So those are all the things that are going right, Eddie. I think the best thing that's happened for the Ducks is the defense is turning in to help out the offense.
Yeah, and with the big guys, producing, Stewart being an unlikely guy putting up points. Unfortunately, Raquel going down with injury, but he had 4 points as well. And I think the only thing that needs to get going now is the secondary scoring, and especially from that second line, Kessler, Silfverberg, and Hagelin, and I guess sometimes Cogliano as well. But these are guys that you expect to produce more, especially Kessler and Silfverberg. Those are guys that we expected to have really good seasons this year if the Ducks were going to be successful. And to win these 4 games in a row, with a couple games without Getzlaf and then without Kessler, Silfverberg, and Hagelin firing on levels that we expect them to. I mean, if these guys can start chipping in goals, along with everybody else, I mean, it's enough to say that that's definitely going to improve their chances of winning. But I mean, these are guys that have to produce if the Ducks are going to make a good run this year.
I completely agree. The Ducks can't be a one-line team. They got to get that second line going, as you talked about, and that kind of leads us to another question. We had James ask us. He talks about it being early, but should there be any concerns about Hagelin being, undersized as far as playing in the West? And I don't really think he's undersized. I don't think that's really the issue here, Eddie. I mean, you look at Cogliano, he's not the biggest guy. You look at Freiberg and Wagner, they're not all the biggest guys. And, they're playing solid defensively, not as much in the offense. All of them are doing, but that's kind of been a team problem. But I don't really think he's undersized. I think it's just a matter of finding out where he fits on this team because we've seen him basically play on every single line, Eddie. And I think they're going to have to figure out if he's going to fit on the second or the third. It looks like if Boudreau stays with Maroon on the top line.
Yeah, and for Hagelin, it might just having to adapt to the Western Conference. I mean, I don't think his size is the issue. You look at Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary. He's one of the smaller guys in the league, and he's got 17 points this season. So I don't think size is the issue for him. It might be him playing in the Eastern Conference for so long with the Rangers and having to come over here and adapt to a new style and a new type of play that the Western Conference provides. And I think eventually he'll get used to it. I mean, all players do, and he's a quality player, so it shouldn't take him too long. And he's just got to find chemistry on a line, and from there on, I think success will come for him.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into another question too. Dr. Fowl that follows us. He asked about since the Ducks are winning, do you keep the line static, especially the top line? Do you keep it with Maroon, Perry, and Getzlaf? I think that's a good question. I think if right now, I would keep Maroon, Perry, and Getzlaf together. They are producing almost all the points in the last 2 games, so I think you got to go with your hot line. So I would keep that line together. I really think it's the second line that they're going to have to figure out. If they're going to keep it with Kessler and Silfverberg, then they've got to figure out if it's going to be Cogliano or Hagelin or someone else. Eddie, I think that's kind of the issue for the Ducks right now is really more the second line trying to get that identity going.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only one that really has to get going right now. I mean, Stewart, like I said, has been doing good. Raquel, although injured, has been doing all right. For the points that they put up, Horkoff and Santarelli, and I guess even to an extent Cogliano are doing pretty good as well. But it's just Kessler, Silfverberg, and Hagelin is what we keep coming back to, and guys that right now you would expect to have more points than they do. And you look at a category I don't really like to look at too much, but when the numbers are glaring like they are for a guy like Ryan Kessler, he's a -10 right now. Hagelin's a -5, Silfverberg's a -5, Cogliano's a -7. I mean, this line is also not, they're not scoring points, but they're also on the ice a lot when goals are getting scored against them. So, that's not a good stat to have, and that's showing the struggles this season. But you don't want to say Kessler's been playing bad for every aspect of the game. I mean, you mentioned it, I believe, on Twitter and on the live show last night that he's been great on the penalty kill and he's been good in the faceoff dot. I mean, those are two aspects that were the reasons we brought him in here. So if he can get the offense going, I mean, he'll be the full package that we expect.
Yeah, I agree, and I think once that second line gets going, this team is going to be extremely difficult to beat. And I still think it should be Kessler and Silfverberg together, and hopefully, they figure out who they put on the left wing now on the second line. Because I would keep the first line the way that they're going now. They're on a roll. Don't break that up. They've got the momentum. Switching gears a little bit, we had another question going more towards the defense here, Eddie. Alex asks us, with the emergence of Holzer and Manson. Is Stoner expendable? Which a lot of people have asked this question, and I get a lot of comments in person and on social media about Stoner and whatnot. I would say no. I mean, Holzer and Manson are both solid guys. I like the way that they play. Manson obviously getting a goal, and if he can add in that aspect to his game is an added bonus. So I don't think it makes Stoner expendable. I think he'll get rotated out of maybe some more games, Eddie. But unless the Ducks try to dump that contract, unfortunately he's got a big deal of that contract that the Ducks would have to try to deal away if they were going to make him expendable. So at this point, I don't think he is.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, he's out there to do one thing. He's out there to play defense and pretty much take penalties. I mean, you don't want him to take penalties, but he has 31 penalty minutes this year, which is by far the most on the Ducks. And that's obviously not a great aspect of his game, but he's defensively responsible this year. I mean, he has made a couple errors, and I mean, a lot of people like to point those out more than anything he's done well. But I think he's done a lot of things well this year. I think he's redeemed himself of some of the things that he struggled with last year, and I think he deserves a roster spot right now. I mean, it's easier to send down than Holzer and Manson, than keeping them in as a seventh defenseman. And like you said, with the amount of money he makes, it's harder to leave him out of the lineup. But I think right now he actually deserves the 5-6 pairing, and for at least we have options if anything. But right now, yeah, he definitely deserves to be with the Ducks.
And coming up, the Ducks are going to go back on the homestand again. They're going to have 3 games coming up here, Eddie. They're going to face Arizona, Edmonton, and the New York Islanders. So as we look at these games, Arizona is now only 1 point ahead of us. If you remember, they had a really hot start. Now they've cooled off a little bit. They've lost 7 of their last 10 now after starting out winning 3 or 4 of their first games. So on this one, I look at it to be a goalie duel. Mike Smith has still been playing pretty well for the Coyotes this year, so it may come down to a close one in this game, Eddie. Maybe a 3-2 type game or 2-1, maybe even a 1-0 game like we saw against San Jose.
Yeah, and Mike Smith is one of those goalies, and pretty much every goalie in the league is like this, but there's other ones that it affects more often, and Mike Smith is one of those where if he doesn't have a lot of confidence or he's coming off a bad start, it's hard for him to get back to a point like he was playing in the beginning of the season. And last night he struggled a lot against the Rangers. He ended up getting pulled in the game, which obviously didn't help, and they ended up losing 4-1. But it's a good sign for the Ducks. I mean, he seems to be a streaky goalie. When he's confident, he's going to play well. But when he loses his confidence, it's bad signs for Arizona. And one of the things that made them so successful too in their first few games to start the season was Domi and Duclair were playing at unreal levels, and Martin Hanzal was chipping in there too. But Duclair has cooled off a bit. Domi slowed down a little bit as well, and those are guys that still can come out on any night and hurt you, but they're getting back to the levels that a lot of people expect them to be at, and I still think it's going to be a tough test, but it's definitely a game the Ducks should win, especially the form that they're in right now.
And this is another critical one, too, as we talked about. If they can beat Arizona, they'd actually leapfrog them. Arizona's got 1 more point than the Ducks. And then on Wednesday, you have the game against Edmonton, which, we talked about this on the post game last night. Unfortunately, they lost McDavid, and they find themselves in last place in the Pacific now with 10 points. They've gone 5-5 in their last 10. And this is another one, Eddie, that the Ducks are going to need to win, too. I wouldn't count Edmonton out. I mean, obviously losing McDavid's a big deal, but they're still scrapping and they're still fighting, and they're only 2 points behind the Ducks. So again, another big 4-point type of swing deal coming up here.
Yeah, and the loss of McDavid is huge for them, and it's disappointing really for everybody in hockey to see a guy like that go out, a guy with so much promise and potential. But they did get Jordan Eberle back. That is a boost for them, but it also makes them possibly a more predictable team to play against with Nugent Hopkins, Hall, and Eberle most likely going to play on the first line together. McDavid was given a good 1-2 punch that was helping them. He was helping Yakupov and Pouliot be one of the best lines in hockey in the early part of the season. But they might be a little bit more predictable, but I think it all depends on Leon Draisaitl. He's going to be key for them. He's been good to start the season. They just have to see if he is beneficial, benefiting from playing with some top players. He'll probably be asked to play second or third line center, and he's going to be the key for them to see if they can keep their offense a little bit more unpredictable.
And then the last game coming up on Friday will be against the Islanders for their annual one-time trip. The Islanders are 7-5-3, and they've played 500 in the last 10 games, losing their last couple ones. But the Islanders, gave us a tough time at Honda Center last year. But obviously, we didn't have our full team last year. If you remember, some of our players were dealing with the mumps back then. But this is another game that may be a little bit more high scoring, but it's definitely a winnable game for the Ducks here, Eddie.
Yeah, Tavares is back for the Islanders, and they still have guys like Okposo as well, who and Boychuk and Halak and that. They have a lot of good guys in the team, and they're a team that is expected to do well in the East. A decent start at 7-5-3 after losing to the Bruins today, and they're another team out there who can put a lot of goals on the board, and they have a pretty solid defensive core going this year with DeHaan and Hamonic rounding out their top four, something they haven't had in a while. So. I think they'll be the toughest team to face this week coming up. But I think 2 out of 3 wins would be nice, but 3 out of 3 would be really nice to get back to 500.
Yeah, I agree. I think we could take at least 2 out of 3 and get into positive. Eventually. I mean, if we can win all 3 of these, the Ducks would end up being 1 game over 500. So. It's definitely doable. Like you said, 2 for sure out of this next 3. So we'll have to wait and see. And we're also starting something new. We kind of tested it last week. We did a post-game show the first time, which, we had a few people on there. It actually went pretty good for the short amount of notice we gave. And then we did another one, a more official one that we announced for the San Jose game. And for those of you that don't know, it's on Blab. Website, which it's a little funky, but it's spelled BLAB.IM is the website, and you go on there and you sign in. And I encourage you to do it now, or we'll remind you on game day. We're going to try and do one tomorrow after the game against Arizona. And we'll try to do it for throughout the year. It'll depend. We don't really have a schedule. More than likely, it'll be the away games usually, but we're going to try tomorrow night again. And it's just a good way for you guys to interact. Just like you give us the questions here and we answer them on there. There's an actual screen, and you can actually type in the questions, and we can type you back with answers and whatnot. Or Eddie and I will go back and forth and answer them for you. And you can actually see our faces. Modeling some type of Ducks and Pucks or Anaheim Ducks gear, right, Eddie? And it's a pretty good setup. I'm glad that you found it. It's worked pretty good.
Yeah, we've been trying to work on, a live sort of show for the last year, and even last year we were trying to work on it. But I recently found out about this, and it's a lot easier to work. It goes through Twitter. You can just log onto the website and easily set it up. It's easy to get somebody to join in. It's easy to have more than one guest. Again, easy for people to interact. It's just a really nice website to do live podcasts, or like we're doing live post game shows. So yeah, definitely stay tuned. I mean, we're gonna have the Arizona game tomorrow, and like Mike said, we're gonna mostly do the road games and any home games when we have, and we'll eventually work out a schedule that works best for everybody. But I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in last time. We had about 40 plus people, which is pretty good for a second one with limited advertising out for that. But we're gonna put this one out there for today and tomorrow, and hope we see more of you again.
Yeah, and just a reminder, it's blab.im, and we'll post some links, tomorrow throughout the day, and hopefully you sign up and you can go in there and talk with us and whatnot. We also have the website out now. Finally, it's linked through thepucknetwork.com. If you go in there and look, everything is linked in one spot now. You can go on there and find the YouTube channel, link to the iTunes, the articles, the store. It's also DNPhockey.com, but also links through that, which we've got some more shirts coming as well. And it's a really good site. You can go on there. It's a lot cleaner. Everything's there. It's going to be part of a bigger network with, more teams that are going to be covered, which should be coming throughout the year. It's just kind of a process is all I can really describe it. But it's working. It looks pretty good. There may be a couple little bugs in there while it's getting developed. If there are, just let me know, and we'll get them worked out. But that's what we have going on. The post-game shows improved website. We're trying to do more and more stuff as obviously you guys, are more sophisticated and want more things, and we're here to, provide. So Eddy and I enjoy it, and we really appreciate all the support and the question that you guys give us. And it was nice to meet a lot of people I saw this last week. I was at FanFest, which was very exciting. I hadn't gone since like the 90s, and when I went, it was a lot different back then. So it was fun to go this time and meet a lot of people, and I had a really good time. So you'll see me at the game still, up in section 417. I usually hang out in the hallways in between the periods, and we'll keep doing the podcast too, in addition to the postgame shows. So don't worry, it's not going anywhere. We'll probably do these each week, or kind of based upon the home stands and road trips or whatnot. And that's it. We'll just keep you updated, and hit us up if you have a question about something. As soon as we hear some more news about some of the players or any movement, we'll keep you updated as always. And let's go Ducks.